Okay. Good evening, friends and colleagues. Welcome and thank you for joining us this evening and taking the time out. I know in your busy schedules and in the heat to join us, and particularly with the onslaught of Ramadan as well. So we thank you very much for joining us. I'm Asma Ahmed, and I'll be your MC for this evening. I warmly welcome you in joining us to mark this particular event. I am Ambassador for Peace with Women's Federation of World Peace. Women's Federation for World Peace works to promote and enhance the unique value of women and seeks to promote the value of women as peacemakers, strengthening families and communities. So that's why I ask you to join me in marking this event, the UN International Day of Families. And what we will be doing as part of that event is exploring the dilemma of modern-day slavery and human trafficking. We will seek to highlight these issues prevailing in society today, but however, put the spotlight on how powerful the family unit is with their love that can provide protective and moral guidance. However, I won't stay on this subject too much, as we have key speakers who will highlight these topics. Thank you. But what I will say, just a few housekeeping issues before we go further. So we're starting at 6:45. Our speakers will speak, and as they speak, they will raise some issues which will be emotive. We are all here in this room, I can presume, because we care about the issues. So they will be emotive. What I will ask you to do is to keep a hold and a thought of your questions and comments, so at the end that we can address them to our speakers. Around 7:45, we're not kind of clock watching, but around 7:45, you'll see me often. You'll hear my voice, you'll get bored of it. But you'll see I'll come in, and what I will do, I probably will keep in on time with our speakers, but also we'll just let you know that the question and answers will finish, and then we'll end the evening. We'll have an opportunity to network, and obviously there's tea and coffee at the end. So that's around 8 o'clock. So without further ado, I hand you over to our first speaker, Ms. Baldit Kaur, author and writer of Families. Families is a book that explores the issues around child grooming and its consequences. Baldit Kaur is passionate about protecting children from abuse and raising awareness of these issues.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies. Good evening. I'm glad I've been asked to speak first, because not only, as Asma said, am I passionate about raising awareness for trafficking, I'm actually quite in awe of the ladies who will be speaking after me. For whereas I only wrote about the subject, they work actively, not only on grassroots levels, but on policy matters, by influencing change to work towards it. Sorry, you'll have to excuse me, I've lost a few of my cue cards. So anyway, today we will be, as Asma again said, we will be discussing modern day slavery and how it has become a global problem. It is an international, it occurs on an international, national level, or even within a community, and it affects millions of people. Slavery has been a shameful and appalling feature of human society throughout history, and I feel strongly rather, and I know by this evening you too will agree, that it should not be allowed to exist and flourish, for it is a fact that modern day slavery is escalating and is just as cruel and inhuman today as it was in the past. I was inspired to write around this subject when I heard, and this was about 10 years ago, that a couple of very young children had been abused and kidnapped by older men. Now today, this is an everyday occurrence. We hear of it every time. But at that time, I was moved. So much so that every time an emotional and disturbing subject comes to light, I start notating. And as I composed my thoughts and researched into the subject, I discovered the existence of human trafficking. I learned not only that it was a multi-layered business where powerful people were involved, and poor and vulnerable people were exploited, but also that some people actually some predators groomed the girls for the sex industry trade. Now, as we know, the book that I've written is named Fanish. The title of the book is Fanish, and it means actually a snake, and is the name of such a predator who scouts vulnerable girls to lure them into his crime world, and ultimately into his drug trafficking and sex trafficking rape. My novel takes us into a journey through the various stages of the grooming of the young girls, and explores the problem of child grooming and trafficking with mystery and suspense, and it is voiced through fictional characters that are not only the victims, but of those that are around, that are involved in their lives. Thank you. Sorry, before I go, I was going to read 3 paragraphs from the novel, but I think that because I get so carried away, I won't be able to speak properly. So anybody who buys the book, the proceeds are going to go to ACPAT. So the press release is on your chairs for a synopsis.
How much is the book?
Sorry,
How
Fanish.
much? How much?
Oh, about £6. And if there are only 2 here, if you'd like to order, I can get them for you. And all the proceeds are going to ACPAT.
Thank you, Baldeep.
Do you want someone to read it?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
I would invite you to maybe read a
Can I
couple of
read
lines
it
from the first
later
chapter.
later on maybe?
Okay, you can read it now if you would like. I've heard the chapter in the book, and I tell you, it is engaging. I resented the time when I had to put the book down. So, Baldeep, would you like to read chapter of the book?
Later on.
Okay then, so what I will do is I will say I've heard the book, and it does raise highlight to the issues that we're talking about today. However, it is also a very good read. So if you go onto Amazon,
Can
type
I-
Baldeep Kaur.
Sorry. I will just like to say a sentence which is in my book, and that all the children that are actually caught in the web of, let's say, Fanish, who is the predator, they are like children who are caught in the quicksand of adult quicksand. Basically, they flounder in an adult world and they can't cope. So basically, that is what.
They flounder in an adult's world, which that's a thought I shall leave you with. And on your chairs, you will see that Baldeep has left a press release. So if you'd like to look at that, but also if you type in Baldeep Kaur on Amazon, the book will be there. So thank you very much, Baldeep. I now introduce you to our second speaker, Bharti Patel from ECPAT, which stands for Every Child Protected Against Trafficking. ECPAT is a leading children's rights charity, campaign and advocates against the rights of children to be protected against trafficking and abuse. Bharti herself has over 15 years of experience, and her passion to challenge root causes underpins her leadership. But to tell you more, I give you Bharti Patel.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and thanks very much for this invitation. It truly was quite an honor when I was asked to speak here, because to speak to a group of people that are not just concerned, but also wanting to act to change things. And I think that's what we are looking for. How do you act? What are your actions that you can take that really can change the lives of people that are extremely, extremely traumatized because of the journeys that they make when they are trafficked and the kind of exploitative situations that they get themselves into. So ECPAT, as was introduced, it is Every Child Protected Against Trafficking. The words in itself speak volumes. We basically are one of the leading child rights authority in the UK, having been around for about 21, 22 years. Our work generally is around advocacy campaigns and policy recommendations for changes, but also we work directly with some of the young victims of trafficking working with them on a weekly basis, providing what we call a safe space for them to help them recover from that situation that they've been for many, many years. And we find that even when we work with them for about 3-4 years, there has been cases where they have been kind of re-traumatized, where when we think that they may have recovered from this situation, there is a kind of a drawback from that. So it's a very difficult situation. We also train frontline professionals because we recognize that without the frontline people, there's a social workers, law enforcement bodies, judges, the judiciary, as well as other key frontline officers like nurses, social workers, teachers, to see if they can recognize, identify possible cases of abuse and what are those signs that they need to be looking out for, and if so, where is it that they should be signposting the particular individual to, so that they are safeguarded and they are removed from that exploitative situation. What that does, it gives us actually direct knowledge as to what the challenges are. Because this role, this particular issue, a lot of people say it's hidden, but actually if you look, it is there, because the only way that we now know that there are 13,000 children, men and women that are trafficked in the UK. So we're talking about not just out there, this is happening in our own country and often on our own doorsteps. And so what that's telling you is that if it's happening, if 13,000 individuals have been reported to be abused, to be trafficked, then yes, it is visible. And therefore we need to be making sure that we get them identified. That's the case. When I saw the subject on this, dilemmas of trafficking, human trafficking, when it comes to children, there are no dilemmas. There should be no dilemmas. This is violence against children. It is the fundamental breach of their rights. Their right to be safe, their right to be protected, and their right to grow up in an environment that is free and safe for them to be children. That is quite clear. This is all written down in the UN Conventions for the Rights of the Children. This is all being ratified, the convention's been ratified by all countries bar one. Can anybody name which country has not ratified the UNCRC, which is the rights of the children to be protected, to be educated, provided with... No? No? Come on, guys. The USFA. The United States of America has yet to, every single state in the country has, including the UK. So we don't know what the thinking behind this, but it's possible that they feel that they don't need an international instrument to then have a duty and an obligation to protect children. But by not having it, USOP in fact has higher numbers of children that are trafficked, higher numbers of girls in particularly that are found on the streets, and children are prostituted. Now I think one of the things you need to recognize is also that this is a demand-led industry. So there is a demand for children to be sexually abused, usually by men, but we cannot rule women out in this situation. There is a demand for children to be used, and I'm going to use that word, in labor exploitative situation. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. There are children from Vietnam that are recruited from the villages of Vietnam, brought into the UK, and their journey, you can imagine, through Russia, being locked up in lorries, freezing lorries. They're brought into the UK. Once in the UK, by the way, they've been groomed, they've been told that they've been sold a promise, a dream, that we're going to take you to a country like the United Kingdom, and we'll make sure that not only will you have access to education, but also that you will get a job and you'll be able to send money back to your parents, who are often living in poverty and poverty-like situations. Once here, they're locked up in a home, probably not like this, but in a house that is kind of dilapidated, and they are forced to grow cannabis, cultivate cannabis. Now that's an illegal activity in this country. Cannabis is illegal. So when the police raid these homes and they find this, what's the first thing you think they would do? It's an illegal activity. There's somebody growing cannabis. Yeah. The police would arrest them because it's illegal. They're committing a crime. But these kids have been forced to commit the crime. And so they are victims of the crime rather than criminals themselves. So when we work with the police, it's trying to say to them, look guys, find out whether they are forced into this crime. So again, quite nuanced, quite complicated. So that's forced labor in this country that we find. I think Belgium talked about it being trade. It is a trade. It's a trade where children are bought and sold. It's a trade where children are abused. And in that trade, every stage of that trade, profits are made. And we talk about huge amounts of profit. So it's not just about the trafficker, the person that recruits the individual, and the abuser. It's the processes that are in between. So if we are going to tackle this, we've got to understand what that process is. What the traffickers are doing is that they're taking advantage of that situation that the child and the family are under. So we need to ask ourselves, why is it? What is it about that family, about the mother, that actually is selling her child in the hope that the child will have a better opportunity, a better chance somewhere else? So what I've understood this to be is that it's what I call, it's a failure of the government. There's no doubt about it. Failure of the government in terms of their responsibility to protect every child that's in there, their responsibility to provide every child with what they want. What do you think children and their parents want?
Good business,
Sorry?
education.
That's it. It's education. Whenever I've spoken to young men that have been trafficked in this country and I've asked them, what is it that you would like now? Thank you. The answer usually is we want the child to be educated, or I want to be educated. So the fact that the child's aspiration is to be educated and the government in that country does not meet that, then the child will look for somebody who comes along and says, I can offer you that. And so that allows the child, A, to be groomed and then to be able to leave the country. Now this happens everywhere. Recently in the UK, you've heard of the cases in Rotherham, in Rochdale, I'm going to finish quite quickly, in Rochdale and in Oxfordshire, really loads of cases, 1,400 girls groomed, drugged, and sexually abused by gangs, sometimes just one-to-one, but the girls transferred from one guy to another. 8, 9 guys sexually abused girls, sometimes as young as 11 years old. But there's also the individuals. You guys must have heard about Jimmy Savile and the abuse that he... Now, Jimmy Savile is known to have abused 500 girls, very vulnerable. One girl was as young as 2 years old. So the situation here is that it's not just about the poor people. It's not just about where people are poor and they need to send their child off somewhere. It is happening in countries like the UK. It's rich, and it's happening because the state failed to protect it. In Rotherham, the local authorities failed to recognize that these girls were being prostituted. They blamed the girls because they said this was their lifestyle. So when the girls were found drunk in a bedroom, they just thought, this is it. The girls just got drunk and then got into this kind of mischief. It took them years to then decide that actually these girls were sexually abused. To end it all, I think what we would look for, and thanks very much, Belgium, for nominating ECPAT as your charity to support the sale of your book. Every, obviously, penny counts. What we're looking for is to say that this needs a global partnership. This is not just within the UK, this is not just within India, within Africa, or within Vietnam. These are crossing all boundaries. And so unless we work at a global level, and it's good to know that this federation is a global federation, and connect up all the communities and all the families across, then we can start putting that pressure on those governments that fail to protect children and make sure that they do start protecting. I hope that's useful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bharti, you've raised and highlighted issues. Time cannot do justice to the cause. I hope we've given you some food for thought and for action. Our next guest speaker is Michelle Denibel from 1 in 4. She works with survivors of sexual abuse and trauma. We were also due to have Linda Dominguez. Hello, we met earlier. So we will have 2 speakers for one today. And I will allow you to Without further ado, I'll hand over.
I'm going to be very generous. I'm going to give my time to Michelle.
Thank you. There shouldn't be like generosity in the
Thanks, Linda. Thank you for inviting us to speak today. We're from the charity 104, which Asma just said. We work with survivors of sexual abuse and trauma, and we work from the cradle to the grave. So there is no cut-off limit of age. We work with young people in schools, and we work with adults as well. And today we're talking a lot about modern day slavery, and that comes in many forms. It's not, as you said, people just from abroad. It's happening in families on the same streets as us, in the same houses as us, in the same flats as us. It's happening with people that are born in this country. It's not just foreign people. It's happening all over and in many different shapes and forms. You know, children are groomed in so many different ways. We've had incidences that have been reported to us where young people have been groomed on their way to school. Someone that gets on the same bus as them. You know, you have some people that are groomed by their friends, others family members. So it's in all aspects of our lives, and it's something that we all need to be aware of, and we need to educate our young people and those around us to be more aware of how we deal with this, how we work with it, so that young people themselves are able to become a little bit more educated about their emotions, so that they're able to describe and talk about how they feel, so that they're able to go to trusted people to say if something's happening to them, so that they are aware of it. And that's something we also need to be able to believe what young people are saying, because I think this is part of the problem, is that when you're talking about what happens in Rotherham with people saying, oh, that's just their style, that's the way they live, or that person always tells lies, oh, they always exaggerate the truth. So these are the sort of things that you hear about young people. You know, don't worry, they're always crying. That person's always upset. Why is that person upset? Why are they always crying? All of those things are very important, and that's what we have to look at. And if we see that, we have to tackle it. We can't leave it. So 1 in 4, we'll go into schools and we work with teachers, we work with students, we work with the dinner ladies, because those are often the people that young people are going to come and speak to. The person in the playground where you've got the little quiet child that holds on to the midday meal supervisor. They're the one that's going to be told. So it's important that those people understand how to manage the disclosure. So that's the kind of stuff that we work with. So we do one-to-one personal counselling for young people, for children, for teachers, for adults. We run workshops around classroom sessions and stuff, so if they want to know a little bit about consent, what consent means. And so we're working with not just primary school children, but children that are in senior schools as well. It's important that they know what consent is, and when consent hasn't been given, and how to give consent. It's important as well that we do things like drop-ins, that we talk to teachers about how the signs around abuse. How do you know if a child's being abused? How do you know? Someone might say, oh, well, this person comes in looking quite dishevelled. That doesn't mean they're being abused. It might be, but that doesn't necessarily mean that. Some of the children are extremely bright, well-dressed, overachievers. It affects all types. So we have to be able to engage with young people and talk to young people in order to find out how they are. Are they happy? Those are the things that are important as well. So we talk about relationships. What's a good relationship? What's a healthy relationship? Even from a very small age, young people need to know what a good relationship is, what a healthy relationship is. We talk about those. We talk for older children. We talk about contraception, sexually transmitted infections. These things are really important, and quite often a lot of people shy away from talking about those subjects. oh no, you don't want to be talking about teenage girls having a sexually transmitted infection. Well, if that teenage girl at 14 has an infection, or 13 has an infection, they need to know. So it's important that all of those things are discussed. So this is a lot of the work that we do with young people in schools. We talk about things like stress, because that's a sign. A child might be very nervous, very stressed, under pressure. Might not just be exam stress. A lot of things we can put down to many things that are going on in the child's school life. But actually, stress is, an anxiety.
Yeah.
Bereavement, all of these things come up. Their emotional health is important. We wrote a book, Whisper, if you get an opportunity to have a quick look through it. But this is a wonderful story, and it has a pull-out, which is a guide that tells you about asking the appropriate questions for each page. We thought about, how do you stop somebody from being abused? And we can't physically go into a home and stop that. We can't physically get on every bus and stop it. But what we can do is prepare young children for understanding their emotions, so that they can speak, so that they don't keep secrets. And this is what this storybook's about. And it's a book that talks about keeping a secret. This could be for a child on their own, to read on their own. It could be something for parents to read. It could be something that young people read together. And it's also on a USB, so it can be used as a classroom activity. But it talks about a little monster, should we call it, or whisper, and whisper has to remain a secret. But I think actually, I'm not going to go into details about it because I really want you to read it, but although this is a book for children, many adults have read this and said, you know what, this has meant something to me. I know this is for children, but actually, this is brilliant. It talks about that process of making a decision. Who do I tell? And for anyone who's ever been a survivor or is a survivor of abuse, holding that secret is so difficult. Who am I going to tell? Should I tell that person? Should I tell that person? What are they going to think about me? Are they going to judge me? Are they going to believe me? All of those things are in here. And when you're a child, you don't think of it in the same way as you do as an adult. You sometimes think, will I be believed? Who should I tell? Sometimes you don't even know what it is that's actually happened. But all you know, for one child, the word might be, I feel funny. So you've got adults and of people working with survivors of abuse and trauma, we have to go with the funny. We can't put our ideas onto young people. We have to go with whatever they are giving us and whatever they are delivering to us, and we then just have to say, let's work with that. So hopefully from today, let's work with funny. Thank you.
Thank you very much, as always. So what I should say is the book that you've highlighted, and there's also literature at the back.
Sorry, I didn't get time because I had the 2-minute sign, so I don't know. There are some leaflets here and a programme of what we do in schools. So if you'd like to take one, and our contact details are on the back. So please contact us. If there's any questions and things, please don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you. Thank you. Also, what I'd like to add is all the literature that's available during networking time. Please take the opportunity to speak to our speakers. Any questions you may have or any information that you may want, please feel free to speak to them. Also, there's some literature at the back about Women's Federation and our organisation. And also, Baldeep's book is at the back for those who may want to read. And Whisper, I'm definitely interested in. So, without further ado, I hand you over to our fourth speaker, Tina Coombs. She is European Advisor for Women's Federation of World Peace, but has also worked to tackle issues of human trafficking, more recently with Croydon Community Against Trafficking. So, thank you very much, Tina.
Thank you. you mind if I sit down, because I have a few papers prepared here, and these ladies are very good in speaking from their experience. So anyway, I just would like to share a few things from our Women's Federation that we have been working more also in a way to prevent. Actually, as you can see, it's such a it's a topic actually that I'm sorry, just for the beginning I get a little bit emotional about it, but I'm getting over it. Yeah, it's a very crucial topic, and I'm not sure how you can relate to it. If you know people who have been through this, or if you know children, or if you know anybody. I guess these ladies know very well, but I'm not sure how you have contact with this area. Yeah. So what I would like to say now is that as we celebrate the UN Day of the Family, it has been a very good move forward that at least the institution of family has been recognized to be a wholesome one and an important one for the well-being of people, husband, wife, children, for the well-being of humanity. That's already a very good step forward, that the UN has recognized family as such an important institution. So our Women's Federation for World Peace has been founded originally with this intention from our founders for women to get together, to really find a way to find their own true value, because I want to connect it with the dignity of women, yeah? Because we know throughout history that the dignity of women has been jeopardized many times and is jeopardized nowadays. And as we are women, so in order to break that cycle that has been going on and on historically, we need to do something. So we need to get a hold of ourselves and of each other and make a stand and say, okay, where am I at? We want to help to work together to restore the dignity and value of original femininity and womanhood, and then reconcile to each other and work together, create a bond of sisterhood, so that we can really understand each other, not judge each other, and know where we are at, and then really work together to move forward in order to bring healing to the hearts of each other and to our families, to our husbands, to our children, and then help to let them have an experience of true love. Because I need to mention the word true love. Love has been so much misused in this world, the word love, you know. But we need to find and establish and experience and live true love, and create the definition, find the definition, what is true love, and then work from there. And I think our Women's Federation has been an avenue to work in that direction, to create healing of one's heart, healing of the relationships in the family and in the community, and through that really solve the problems that we face today. Because when I was coming with Michelle from Croydon, yeah, we were talking about it, of course, yeah, and then Michelle also mentioned, yeah, it is like an epidemic. It's an epidemic today. The sexual abuse is an epidemic, and it's too much. We have to really say, finish. It's enough. Enough is enough. So we need to see what we can do. We need to make a stand. We need to work together. As you said, we need to work in partnership and create healing of our own hearts, healing of the relationships, cooperation of like-minded organizations to really bring out true love, goodness, and beauty, and then help the talents to grow and prosper and to multiply, you know. So in that sense, our Women's Federation has been working to really look at the point of dignity. On a European level, we had a few times a conference on the dignity of womanhood. And then we also organized some workshops to find how do we define dignity, how do we work on recovering the dignity of womanhood. There are aspects, two aspects, internal and external aspect. Yeah? We need internally to work on it, to really feel it, that every woman can feel her own dignity, her own value, and the beauty of it. And then externally, we need to work together to clean up our society that is flooded with images that destroy the dignity of womanhood. Yeah? So we need to do something about advertising. You know, it's just too much that the woman, the body of woman, is used to sell everything, from cars to anything. A woman's body and is used for selling things. So we need to kind of find a way to clean up our society a bit more in that area externally of these images, yeah, and really portray more the true beauty of womanhood. So that's why, if you would like, we can let's stand together and work together and exchange. And if we have workshops, we will support each other. Your workshops, our workshops on the dignity, and then also we need to promote more and define, as you mentioned, relationships. Young people, the children, they need to experience what is a true and a good relationship from the parents, where they are protected and loved and just cared for, and where they have the freedom and the security to grow and find and bring out their everybody has a gift in themselves, and develop it through learning and education. And there are these 4 realms of heart that we could define, actually. The realm of children, to just be able to be children and experience a true parental love, And then the realm of where children learn to love and to care for each other and share as brothers and sisters, as sisters. And this is a realm and at a time where they can experience that. And then as they grow, the sanctity of sexual relationship needs to be understood. It's a sacred thing. It's a sacred activity which is not anymore looked at as sacred, but it is sacred because it creates new life and it has consequences. And I think young people need to understand and value themselves and then the value of these relationships, yeah. And then also if the husband-wife relationship, it's a realm where it's unique and exclusive. It should be really just husband-wife relationship to experience that heart and that love, yeah. And then as parents, as they have children, to really be able to express that realm of heart of giving unconditional and completely selfless love to the children. And these types of 4 realms of heart can be extended on a bigger level, because we can see each other as my sister and as my brother, or an elder person like my father or my mother, or younger ones, they see them all as my children, But exclusively, the husband-wife relationship is exclusive. That is one and one. That should not be shared. But through this, I think our Women's Federation, we can contribute, and we would like to contribute and work more on preventing and helping people to form this kind of healthy relationships, so that eventually then these problems will diminish and will finish at some point. So I just wanted to share about that, and thank you for listening. Thank you so much for explaining about your work. Thank you.
Thank you to our speakers. I'm sure you will join me in saying that it was very informative, very insightful, and has left us with many food for thought. We are not talking about just prevention and raising awareness, but we're also talking about healing. So thank you to our speakers. Our last speaker, but artist for you, is Lynn Bradley, multi-talented artist, author and speaker. She will perform a poem to highlight the issues she is also working towards this cause. So Lynn Bradley, I can hand over to you. Thank you.
Good evening. I shall let the poem express my feelings towards it. And it's called The Slavery of Our Time. How she cowered in the corner as she waited for the sound of the turning of the handle, then his boots upon the ground. She tried hard to think of something to remove that awful dread of the one who kept her captive, of his voices in her head that kept saying she deserved it. She'd been wicked in her past, and she cried out for her freedom, that this nightmare wouldn't last. But her hope had almost vanished as she huddled in her cell, every day a constant torture, every night a living hell. All her dreams now turned to ashes, all her self-worth stripped away. There was nothing left to live for, slowly dying day by day. How she trembled as his footsteps now ascended to her loft, and she waited for his screaming. But the voice she heard was soft. Precious one, do not be frightened. I have come to set you free. You will never more be troubled. Dry your eyes and come with me. I will take you to a better place where there is no more pain. And I promise you, my dear one, you will never cry again. So she went with him to heaven, and she left this world behind, where they found her lifeless body, an appalling, shocking find. And they whispered, what a tragedy, and muttered, what a shame. But they very soon forgot about the girl without a name. And though the news of girls like this was growing every day, all the people grew desensitized, and they forgot to pray for the 27 million who are held against their will, who are used for man's depravity, their numbers growing still. And the people thought, how shocking, but there's nothing we can do. And a voice cried out from heaven, world, her freedom starts with you. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. Very thought-provoking. Session one of our evening has closed, so I thank you for your time and patience. The floor is now open for questions to our speakers. But what I would ask is respect each other in terms of giving each other thought. Any questions that may arise that cause difficulty, please take responsibility. If there are any issues that have been highlighted within yourself and difficulty, please do seek advice. There will be some information with our experts, because the very minimum that we can do is we can raise the awareness of the issue within us. However, if there is anyone that you know or any question that you want to ask, please feel free to ask our speakers. But now I hand over to you, but one person at a time, and please be aware of the time. So this session will last about 20 minutes. So at 7:50 I will start wrapping up. Thank you. So,
I just want to ask you, Michelle, about the organization like 114.
Yeah.
You've been telling that, correct me if I'm wrong, so you established the organization mainly at school, or what do you do?
It was established in 1999 by Colin O'Goran, who is now does 1 in 4, I think, in Ireland. Or I think he works somewhere else now. But he set up the organisation back in 1999 in Catford, and it's still there. We're still there, and it was originally to work with adult survivors of sexual abuse and trauma. But we also now work with children, so it's a charity that in its own right that's been going for some time. So.
And then for the children, they are always scared of the strangers. To get their confidence to come out. Is that how you train the teachers, that they can talk to the children, or how do you, educate for the people who are responsible to talk with the children to come out with all their feelings?
Sometimes it's not strangers, and I think, we do have this view that it's a stranger, someone else that's going to inflict pain or abuse a child. Sometimes it's a mother, sometimes it's a father, it's an uncle, it's a friend, it's a teacher, it's a social worker. It's anyone, and that is the point. It's not other people. It's people around us. We need to educate ourselves and those around us about looking after young people, so that they're not our clients. We've got all these adult clients. We have a huge waiting list. Other agencies around us are closing their waiting list because there is an epidemic. The NHS cannot cope with the amount of referrals that they're having for trauma. They can't cope with it. All the charities are bursting at the seams. They can't. There is an epidemic. Now, these are all adults, but most of their abuse took place in childhood. So there's lots of people walking around with things that some people remember them, some people don't remember them, some people think that something would have happened, but lots of people are walking around. It only takes one trigger, one trauma, one death, one marriage, one certain smell, a change in the weather, change in mood, loss of a job, unemployment, bereavement. All of these things can trigger somebody, and they're right back to where they were when they were 5. And it can happen to, the figures are, we're called 1 in 4 because in 1999 research was done at Roehampton University, and this was 1 in 4 was the figure of adult survivors of sexual abuse and trauma, and this was reported cases. And we know from our experience that most of this goes unreported. So if 1 in 4 is the reported amount, how big, how many more? If you just take a look around the room, 1 in 4, we know it's higher than that.
That's true.
So this is what we're working with. It's not just other people. It's us. It's our friends. It's our family. The people that we see every day. It's everyone.
So I'm an optometrist, so I see people public every day. So some wants to, we can just give maximum time to see one patient in like 20-25. But there's a lot of things that they want to, besides from the eye test, they want to talk. Some even say that, I just want to end my life. But within that time, I can't just, to talk. So for me, I don't know. I just have to tell them, you better talk to the GP. You better talk to the social worker. I don't know who to direct. Because when I, meet here, when I meet
Can I suggest then, rather than say that, because they're very unlikely to do that, is that you have one poster up that says Childline, because Childline take thousands and thousands of calls from children every day and adults, and they will signpost them. So even if you just had that poster up in your room, you can just say, that's the number I'm going to write down for you.
I'm glad I come today so that I know who to direct.
Thank you. Thank you. Next question. Sorry, you had your hand up.
I was going to ask you, what is your relationship with the social service? Because the problem in this country is, from what I've learned since I've been here, and I've been there for decades, is the appalling record of the social services as themselves been creating so many problems. I heard recently by somebody canvassing for the latest election that social workers get a crime if they remove a child from a family. Now, when I heard that, I was not completely disbelieving, because I've heard so many things before that I can well believe that sort of thing happening. Which makes me and the social service have an appalling record of the people whom they put their clothes on for the result, and many families which are victimized in a horrible way by those services. So I was wondering, what is your relationship with the social services?
Well, we do get referrals from social services. I mean, so we get referrals from all sorts. So from GPs, from other charities, from the NHS, all statutory organisations. So it may be that a social worker is working with a family who they suspect that this person is a survivor of abuse. It might be that they might be working with the mother or the father or a relative or a carer of a young person. They will ring us and say to us, look, is there any chance that you could do some counselling with this young person? And that's the kind of contact that we have from a lot of social workers. That's our main contact. It is always generally that when they're working with somebody.
If I can just add to that, I think one of the things that we hear from social workers, and we train them on a regular basis, is the sheer numbers of individuals, you said, and also the complexity of the problem that they are in. So I think it's about also not having adequate resources, huge turnover in the social service, in social workers. Austerity cuts for local authority means that local authorities aren't able to get the numbers of social workers that they need. So I think it's a much more complex problem. They've got a lot of added responsibility, but the responsibility is not being matched with the resources that they would need. So that's one of the things that we're campaigning for.
That's why
we need resources.
I think you also have to remember, we only hear about the really terrible cases, you know, lack of communication, you know, you only have to look at Peter Connolly and Victoria Kalimbi, all those ones. You never hear of all the successful ones, and it comes down to exactly what you said.
Yeah.
And there are far more successful ones than they are, that, you know, because as I said, every day social workers are contacting organisations to support families. You know, we're just one of many organisations that they contact. They do a really good job with very minimal resources. They really do, and I think it's easy for us to criticise. It really is, but actually, they don't have any money. You've got one social worker, and with a caseload of like 50, 60, 70 families. How can you work with so many families? One person.
One person with 50 families?
Yes.
It's not that sounds impossible.
No.
Thank you. So if I can just ask, before we move on, can I ask you to say your name as you address your question? Because it would be nice to make ourselves personal and be known. So we know Bharati, we know Michelle. So if you can just say your name and your question. But whilst you're saying the question, just to allow equal access, so if you can just shorten your question and direct it to our speakers. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jenna Hussain, Ambassador for Peace in Universal Peace Federation. This is not the first time I'm attending this sort of meeting, and one of them was in Soros talking with trafficked children. You were saying that trafficked children, the mother had main concern is to be educated, sending to the abroad. I don't think so, because sort of mother should, I'm sure about that, or it's my opinion, having about 5, 6, 7 children at home alone. Poor, has no food, nothing in their children's tummy. She doesn't send her child to be educated because she doesn't know what is education. She doesn't give down about education. She wants something to feed herself and her children. Now, I am hearing about educating a lot. What kind of education you want to give to the woman or to the child? How are you going to implement it? It's a big thing to do. And from this experience of my life, I found the word educating is relevant. Main thing is how to give knowledge, how to make the woman feel that she's not alone, even she's alone. How are we going to implement these things to make her strong and support her children? Who's behind all these things? We have to go to the root of who's doing this traffic. Where's the government? Where's the authorities? Where's the society? Where's the family? This is how all roots. We have to go to the main root, the biggest root, which is down deep in the earth, to eradicate it and make this matter easier for children. I worked for children many years ago, and I worked for human rights, and I worked for a lot of charities and I worked with a child and mother.
Mm.
There's a lot of gap between a child and mother happening in every time. How are we going to fill this gap? What are we going to do? This is what I'm concerned about.
So can I ask how you addressing your question to the speakers?
I mean, I think it is an important issue that you raised, an important point. Often it's the lack of some of the fundamental services that mothers don't have a choice. But you're right that if they've got 5 children and there's no food on the table, how do you get food? You don't send a child to a school. But I find that the schools are not accessible. They haven't got decent schools in the areas that we're talking about. And so I agree that we need to be able to increase the accessibility, but also increase the level, the kind of the schools' status, improve the way that they are teaching, and so we need teachers in those areas. So it's a very complex, and I agree, we need to go to the root cause of the problem. And so when I hear poverty, that it's the poor people, it's not just poverty, because numbers of people in poverty is much, much greater than the numbers that are trafficked and abused. So it's not just, and we need to be able to kind of disaggregate that number, the phrases, and say what is it that really is needed at the ground level, at the grassroots level. I agree with you, there's a lot more issues that need to be addressed.
Because there are two matters happening, maybe the mother or the father even do these things. The conflict in the country,
That's right.
and the political problems.
Yeah.
You can see now,
Yeah.
I mean, in India, in Yemen,
Yeah.
in Syria,
Yeah.
in Iraq, in so many countries.
Yeah.
I mean, they are even not accepting a refugee to give them dignity
Yeah.
for a child, for a woman, for a man, to build better life, to build better world. They are not allowed.
Yeah.
So these are the problems. How are we going to tackle? Who is going to be in?
Thank you.
It is at the policy level that we would have to tackle that. I agree, and that's what ECPAT's doing. It's at the policy level.
Thank you. So just to allow equal access, and again, please do say your name, next question, and also summarize the question, because in terms of, I appreciate it's a discussion, but also to allow access across the floor, please summarize your question and address it to the speaker. So next question.
I was really interested in your talk, and I just wondered, how shocking do we have to get? We've heard about sexual abuse, we've heard about the trafficking. What about organ harvesting? I mean, that's not spoken about.
Yeah.
You know, and how do we tackle empathy fatigue?
Yeah.
Because it strikes me that, you know, we get it raised high on the agenda, and then it all just becomes, oh, another organ,
Yeah.
another sexual abuse case. That's
Yeah.
where we are with
Yeah.
sexual abuse. Another trafficked person, actually just round the corner from 1 in 4, there's 2 car washes,
Yeah.
clearly trafficked people, but actually they appear quite happy. And they don't want to go home,
That's right,
and they run
yes.
away when the police come to them.
Yeah.
But, you know, then when you hear about organ harvesting, what next?
Yeah.
I mean, you must be seeing it all the time, and I just wondered if you could give us a bit more insight about those kind of things that's in the organisation.
I think you're absolutely right. I think there might come a time when we just hear this and then it just passes over us, and you kind of say, the problem is so huge. What can I do as an individual? And often that comes to a lot of us. Organ harvesting, yes, but it's always happened. What I think I'm hearing now is that we're reporting it, and there are systems that are allowing people to record it.
But if you just interject, for those of us who don't know, can you just explain organ harvesting?
Oh, yeah, sure, sorry. Organ transplant is nothing but getting somebody who's trafficked, and then they remove the organs, and that could be kidneys, it could be, it could be anything that person needs. And there is, again, it's a trade, that there's a demand for it, and there are traffickers who are quite happy to provide a supply. And the supply comes from vulnerable children, the supply comes from vulnerable communities. So again, it's, I'm concerned about it, but what I think we need to do is continue to talk about it, continue to talk about the impact, not just on the individual who's had his or her organ removed, but also on the family, also on the community that you're talking about. And therefore, whose responsibility is it? How can it be tackled at the grassroots? And I agree with you. We're not asking the question why. We're talking about what it is, we're talking about how big it is, how big the problem is, who it's happening to. But I hear very, very few questions as to why it's happening. And that's where ECPAT is quite strong. And the why is actually asking the governments. Let the government try and give us the answer as to why it's happening, and then let them take the action. Our role is to make sure that we continue to push this with them, continue to share some of these issues with them. And that's what we're doing. And I think we're getting a lot of support from the public who are saying, yes, we can help you. We can sign your petition because we recognize this is what's needed. The government can see 70, 80,000 people, individuals that have signed a petition calling on the government to do something. And so that in itself is quite powerful. I think the power lies with us, but the actual action needs to be taken at the highest level in that sense. Yeah.
Thank you, Bhakti.
My question is, if you, all of the speakers spoke virtually about we have an epidemic, and it seems to be increasing, and all the work you're doing with charities is becomes more and more important in a way. Sorry, my name is Krista. But does it also, when we talk about the roots of the problem, does it also have to do with an understanding of the values which we promote? When we talk about the government should do things, the government is just people. And what kind of people are they? Are they people with the highest values? I think we discovered in the last few years maybe quite the opposite in many cases. So why do we still say the government should do it, money should be spent? It is not getting the root to it, unless every individual looks into the inside and has the proper value understanding. And from what Mrs. Kuhn said, that we work in the restore the realm of heart, the realm of love relationship. I think a fundamental change will not take place, even if we have the best education. I recently talked with a friend of mine, and within the interfaith context, she's in the educational sphere, take the expert, and we talked about children, what children perceive. And someone made a comment that it seems that children, when they are young, they still have a nature in them to perceive what is good, to have an understanding of what we call innocence. And I myself asked her, because I'm a grandmother and I've got my young grandchildren, how do you keep it? What do you do to keep it in the children before they become corrupted when they grow older? And the simple answer this lady told me, and in the little group we had, she said, love. Love the children, love the children, love the children. So that they know who they are, and then it stays with them, into adulthood. That's what we wish, don't we? So we've got to go to the root, the true nature of relationships. Not organizations only, not managing the problem. No, going deeper than that.
So we need each other as partnerships. We need to work together in partnerships.
I was going to say, policy change is important, though. I mean, we can take this to the streets, and we can march, and we can force people to throw a high, just like when the poll tax, no one wanted to pay, everyone took to the streets, and there was a change. We know as members of the public, we can make that happen, but it's important to have policy change, because if something is not illegal, or if people think they can keep doing things, then we need policy change. We do need it. The government does need to step in at some point, but we still can take things to the street if we really want to. We can still march. We had a march over the Millennium Bridge earlier this year, in February. That this is the sort of thing that we need to keep doing so that we can keep this in focus, we can keep highlighting it. And then, as you said, once we're highlighting this and we're talking about positive relationships, then we can talk about love, we can talk about the family, caring for each other, or looking after children, you know, brothers, sisters, you know, all of these things are important, but it has to start somewhere. And policy change is, we need it. We need government to.
And also, I think it's important to recognise that there are, because it's so complex, the problem is not straightforward, as was explained. It's coming from all kinds of directions. So we all need to be able to work together. Everybody's going to do different things. ECPAT's going to do this. 1 in 4 is actually going into schools and doing that direct grassroots levels. And I think all of this is needed. The book will kind of highlight the problem in a different way. There is no doubt about it. There's a huge breakdown of society and the cultures that we're talking about. But what are the reasons behind it? I've spent some years in India, and what I've seen is that it's the removal of your basic resources that families rely on. And that can be either due to climate change, because some of us are just consuming far too much, and that's impacting the rural communities. It's the investment in building shopping malls, for example, that again is taking away resources from. So there are the economic policies, there's the social issues, there's a breakdown of society structure. So all of us can play parts in different ways in different places.
I guess it depends which countries.
Absolutely, that's right. Oh,
Yes.
absolutely, yes. And this is where your global federation would be quite important.
Thank you. I can see this is an emotive subject. We have. Oh, do you have to? Michelle? Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you to both Lisa and Michelle for coming and taking the time this evening. Just those last two hands. I'm just going to raise awareness of time. We are in time, we're doing good time, but just to allow time, can you just direct your questions? And then just to let you know, at 8 o'clock we will be closing session 2. So, your name, please, and your question.
My name is Nofuneto. I left the room for a few minutes, so I'm not sure maybe what I'm asking could have been covered. What I wanted to ask, how can we maybe empower women? Because I mean, I'm coming from an African background where such topics are taboo, you know, and you find that like these things happen, but women are not empowered enough to talk about them. And then I'm also thinking, because of that, children grow up in that maybe abusive environment, but then because they see that nothing is being done, then they accept it as normal, and then it just goes up in a cycle.
The speakers?
Yeah, I mean, in our Women's Federation, we did organize some workshops, like a day on the dignity of women, and then we go into depth, you know, how to understand it, how to feel it, and then also what to do externally, like doing activities like having a signature campaign or doing something externally to make people aware that the dignity of women is important. So we do organize workshops if you would like to participate sometime, but also I know that, for example, in Africa, our Women's Federation, what they are doing is as well is to give microcredit lending, even just to empower women materially a little bit, that they're not completely dependent on whoever, you know. But so they have been, our volunteers have been setting up various little projects to help them to get business-wise or economically a little bit more empowered, more confidence, you know, that they can do something for their children. And so there are various ways of internal empowerment and also external through microcredit lending and different things to help them set up a small business. This way we have been trying to work, and it has been proving successful in many areas where they have been working. But
even in the UK, let's not forget that for a long time there was this huge, what we call, culture of disbelief. So people thought it doesn't happen here. It cannot happen in a country like the UK.
Yeah.
We've been working on it for 20 years, 21 years, and it's only in the last 4 years that we managed, our government, to say we need a piece of legislation to make slavery, to make trafficking illegal. So it took us a long time, and and what you just said, it's just about pumping this through, about in some ways working with the women, about giving them that confidence, and saying actually you have a role to play, and I think we all have a role to play in this area. Yeah.
Thank you.
We're an all-women organisation, by the way.
Thank you. I mean, the comments that have been made here, I know she'll ask, if there are, we have space, I think, for 2 more questions, but I just want to note that the comments that have been made here, there seems to be joint responsibility, both at global and individual level. So as we go on to our next questions, I just kind of wanted to point that out. So, lady in the scarf, and then I'll take your question.
Yeah,
So,
my name is Nusra. I heard that lady talking about the change of policies, pressurizing the government about that. The policy has, and the lady said about the childhood, how the children should be told about the values, the love, the care. So the policy, I think, what can we do to change the policy at the educational level and introduce that in the curriculum of all the schools, to have a class or a teacher allocated for that?
Yes,
What can we do about that?
That would be desirable if we would have in the schools education to help children already to understand about their value and character education, to help them to develop a good character. What does it mean?
Rather than just talking about preventing sex abuse and children being abused.
Character
They are
education.
giving a broader value of family, as you said, of love, of care, of morality. And so the policy needs to be changed at the school level. The curriculum should introduce something which has some significance when the kids are very small, when they're at nursery. From that time, if something of that is introduced in the curriculum, I think that would be a great help. That's how I feel. I've been in education, so.
That would require policy change, get that in Parliament.
Yes, so when we say policy
That's
change,
right,
it has to
yes.
be very specific.
Yeah.
When we say policy change at government level, we always think about money, about the funds, but we have to target at the education level. I think that will be the start.
yes. Thank you, Nusra. Thank you. Gentlemen.
John O'Neill from the Morality Forum. I think we've highlighted, Tina spoke very well about the family, Christy highlights about going to the root causes. Since the 1960s, the sexual revolution of permissive society has been a total disaster for our nation. We're told that sex is like a recreational sport by the media, and in schools they've been sexualising the children. Some of the sex education programs are diabolical. I've got one story here in Camden last year, a little 7-year-old girl who were being sexualised, and homosexuals were in there with homosexual flags all over the school. So the root causes, I feel, is very clear. We have to get God into the heart and soul of this country again. When I was a boy in this country, a religious ethos was prevalent. We didn't know about teenage pregnancies, STIs, nothing like that. And we certainly didn't need sex education because God was in the heart and soul of this country. And studies prove it conclusively. D.H. Unwin, I'll finish with this, I could talk about this for hours, I'll finish with this, it says it all, I think. D.H. Unwin from Cambridge University did a study of 88 civilizations in the 1940s. What he found out was, whenever there was premarital sex, widespread promiscuity, infidelity and same-sex relationships, within 3 generations the whole civilization was wiped out. So we need universal God-centered values again in this country, and many of these problems will, and also one final point, the politicians have got so much to be guilty for this. They've allowed pornography to come into our society, they did nothing about it, and it's destroying marriages, children become addicted to it. We need God-centered men and women in that parliament again. That would also a huge reason to get this country back on track.
Thank you very much for your comments and your questions. I'm sure there's much more. The time this evening cannot justify what we need to be talking about. It is just literally a foot in the door. What I would like, just as we close it, just the last few minutes of your time, Can I just thank our speakers this evening for taking time out, and also thank you, our audience, for coming, and myself for taking time to come out. But what I would say is please use this time to have tea and coffee, obviously, but also ask key questions amongst yourselves about what we can do. We heard about joint responsibility, we heard about individual responsibility, we heard about causes, but we also heard about healing. So I'd like to say, leave a very beautiful thought on that, about tackling these issues, but family and values remain central. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.